So in this video, we're going to be talking about the breakdown of the Principates that leads directly into the 3rd century crisis. So the Nerva Antonines actually end with one more emperor, that's Commodus, but Commodus is very famously not one of the quote-unquote 5 good emperors. He is a bad emperor. Now, part of this has to do with his reputation, which comes from sources that are not particularly reliable, but historical consensus is that Commodus does not measure up and that his reign is in many respects detrimental to the empire. Now, Commodus seems like a good idea at the time. He is intelligent. He is the son of Marcus Aurelius, who everybody agrees is a great man. He seems to be able to take after his father, but more than this, he has been trained for the role. Unlike Caligula, another emperor who seemed like a good idea at the time, was son of a very famous and popular leader. Commodus is trained by Marcus Aurelius throughout his youth in statecraft and military leadership. He has the title of Augustus and is ruling jointly with his father from the age of 15. He is fighting alongside him at the front. He should know what he's doing. He should be a capable emperor. And, there's a great deal of discussion about this, whether Marcus Aurelius believed that Commodus was the best choice in terms of merit, or whether he preferred Commodus as a son compared to whatever other candidates there were available. This is an unresolved issue. What we can talk about is Commodus's failure and some of the reasons for it. Part of it is that, this is a turbulent time and the advisors that he has around him disagree with each other. He comes into office as a relatively young man compared to the Nerva Antonines, who are all much older, more experienced, and, sagacious. The problem in terms of his policies is that in addition to his youth and inexperience and arrogance, he, as a result of these sort of emotional immaturities, he tends to scorn the Senate, which is made up of theoretically older, wiser men. He seeks to use his own advice and his own friends to promote his sense of self-superiority. Economically, he debases the coinage, which we'll be talking about more. He isn't the first emperor to do this, but the debasement that it takes place under Commodus has a direct economic impact. He ends the wars that are undertaken by his father. And so in an even worse case than Hadrian, who suffered a backlash amongst military leadership and the soldiery when he ended the wars, the military aggression of Traian. Commodus simply puts to an end the major wars that are taking place on multiple fronts under Marcus Aurelius, this causes a loss of momentum, some setbacks on the frontiers, a sense of wasted effort and lives, and causes a sense of diminution of confidence in him compared to his father as a general and as an emperor. He doesn't produce an heir. He doesn't go about attempting to produce an heir, either through the usual means of looking for a meritorious noble or creating one of his own. Either way, he doesn't seek to promote the continuity of political leadership. He's undermining the continuity of military action. He is undermining the stability of the economy. All this is harbingers of what is to come under the Severans and afterwards. Perhaps most famously and notoriously, Commodus, because of his self-esteem issues or for whatever reason, is obsessed with popular adoration. He seeks to place himself above the other nobles, one gets the sense that he's trying to be more than merely an emperor. He's trying to outshine, the great emperors who were his immediate predecessors by becoming, one level up from this. And so he isn't satisfied simply with leadership and the machinations of the government. He seeks to be raised above that, and so he undertakes gladiatorial games and all of these other things that in which he is trying to demonstrate his own personal physical and character superiority. And so he styles himself as Hercules Commodus. Commodus, as emperor, is claiming to be a manifestation of this ancient Roman demigod of strength. This provokes a great deal of concern and ridicule, undermining his position, and in the end, he is assassinated by his concubine and his wrestling partner, which honestly, literally, it makes the demise of Nero seem noble by comparison. Commodus does damage to the Principate himself, and a good example of this is, like Nero, he is succeeded by a period of intense instability. 193 is the year of 5 emperors, in which governors from throughout the empire seek to take advantage of the anarchy at the heart and succeed each other rapidly in rule. Pertinax is the Senate's choice for as a successor to Commodus. He and so this is sort of a backlash from Commodus's scorning of the Senate, and he restores order and tries to restore the coinage, but he sells offices very cravenly and alienates the Praetorian Guard, and is ousted in favor of Didius Iulianus, who is the guard's choice. And then there are multiple claimants who go to war with each other in order to restore order in Rome. And these are in conflict with each other. In 193, and Clodius Albinus doesn't go away. He continues to fight against Septimus Severus, who is the final victor in these civil wars, and takes Rome and establishes a new regime, a new dynasty. This period is marked by historians, and the characters that become prominent during this period are seen as signifying what is the problem with Rome. And for most writers, this is that the people in Rome have become disconnected from the ordinary lives of everyday people in the empire, which is completely separate. In a way, this is a foregone conclusion from the Roman mentality from the beginning of the origins of empire back in the Republic, which is that there's Rome and everything else. And so Rome has always seen its own domains as peripheral and secondary, and thinking of Rome itself as the only thing that matters. And by this point, this attitude has created this hothouse atmosphere of privilege and disconnect in Rome itself that is in many ways self-evidently toxic. And this leads to some of the problems that we're talking about this week. The part of the problem of the breakdown of the Principate is the disconnect between Rome and the rest of the empire. And we see this in figures like Didius Iulianus, but this is in a way is typical even of the good emperors that are that pass through this period. Septimus Severus seems to be an infusion of new blood. He seems to be a new Vespasian who saves the empire after a year of instability, much like Vespasian, and comes from a famous external province. He's from Africa province. He seeks to undertake reforms that are designed to restore or at least shore up the stability stability of the Principate. He disbands the Praetorian Guard. He adopts Clodius as a means of trying to remove him from enmity, and ends up fighting against Niger and against Clodius as well. He conciliates the Senate in contrast to the hostility of Commodus. He undertakes to present himself as a civilian rather than a military emperor. Marcus Aurelius and Commodus and Pertinax, wore military outfits to emphasize their connection to the military. But he this doesn't last because he can't keep on alienating the army. The army's intimidation of the Senate, the army is rapidly been becoming over the previous century or more a powerful political focus in rivalry with the Senate, and so. So the policies desired by the army leadership and by the soldiers have at this point direct impact on the Principate because the emperors are so dependent upon the militaries for support that they simply cannot ignore them, and the result is that. The result is often that even somebody like Septimus Severus, who seems to be a resumption of strength in the Principate, is unable to resolve the separate conflicting forces within. So the Senate ends up ratifying Septimus's adoption into the Antonines, and so this is why the Severans refer to things as being Antonine during their period. In order to strengthen his reputation, Septimus Severus declares himself to be retroactively adopted into the Nerva Antonines, and as a direct successor to Marcus Aurelius. And the result is that he pursues a number of reforms of varying success. And so, while conciliating the Senate, the power of the military is such that he is pushed to reduce their power. What happens instead is that there is a imperial council that exists for the sole purpose of providing guidance to the emperor. This is presaged by what Commodus had done, listening to his friends rather than the Senate. Septimus Severus actually formalizes this, and this becomes permanent. The imperial council becomes a permanent part of the surroundings of the Roman Empire, all the way up through the Byzantine Empire, as a separate thing from the Senate, as a separate means of attaining status for members of the nobility. And the local administration, which had been handled by the Senate, is now undertaken by official appointees that are called Praetorian prefects. He institutes stronger economic controls, which are swamped by the forthcoming problems. He raises the provinces to the level of Italy, and this is a striking moment. What this is saying is that Italy has always been, has always had precedence. Italy, from the late Republic, has been seen as an extension of Rome in terms of the need for protection, in terms of policy, in terms of the rights and privileges guaranteed to the people that live there, in terms of economic opportunity. The province of Italy is marked off as separate from the other provinces, as being at the level of Rome. This is one of the reasons why it was illegal for Julius Caesar to cross from Gaul into Italy, because with his army at the Rubicon, because Italy was a specially protected area. Septimus Severus raises the provinces to the level of Italy. Italy no longer has special privileges, or rather, all of the provinces have the same privileges. He undertakes military reforms. Critically, he creates more legions in order to increase the protection for the frontiers, and provides higher wages and better benefits, including terms of service and so forth. And seeks to provide more opportunities for war. All of these as sops to the soldiers and military leadership to keep them happy. But you can anticipate what the problem with this is going to be. The military is already a massive proportion of the costs for the imperial treasury. And this is only amplifying that and worsening the danger to the imperial administration and to the economy of the empire, which very rapidly, within a matter of years, becomes critical and leads directly into the third century crisis. Um, During this period, we have an emphasis on the military, not just from the emperor, but an awareness of the presence of soldiers and of legions throughout the empire as being quintessentially Roman. We have a sense of this from earlier on during the Julio-Claudians, but the kind of Roman that people are most likely to see throughout the provinces is a Roman soldier. They become representative of the idea of Romanness. We have a number of different kinds of examples of what it is like to be a Roman soldier, and we have the sign up pledges, and we have letters and documents and these kinds of things, stray random pieces of the lives of soldiers, in addition to the tales of what the soldiers are accomplishing in the wars that are initiated against the enemies of Rome. In some respects, the Severan that has the most attention is Caracalla. And Caracalla, notice the name here, by the way. So, he is born Lucius Septimius, but he gains this. The name that he has as emperor now is the inheritance of names that goes back to Augustus, and so he has Imperator, Caesar, Augustus, the names that the man Augustus passed on to his successors. Plus, he has the Marcus Aurelius Antonius that comes from this sort of artificial inheritance, artificial adoption by the Severans into the previous dynasty. Caracalla is a vivid individual. He succeeds sharing power with another successor. His name is Gita. He kills Gita and takes full control. He's a soldier emperor and makes no bones about this. He bribes the army with still higher pay, with the result that the treasury is exhausted, and so he's forced to raise taxes and debase the coinage. And his attitude is very much in terms of what the power of the Roman Empire can accomplish. He's stabbed by his praetorian prefect, Macrinus the Moor. It's the first non-senator princeps. So the Antonine Constitution pursued by Caracalla is transformative, and also in continuity with what the Severans and even Commodus have been trying to do. Most famously, he extends citizenship to free men throughout the empire. And free men, remember, there's an important distinction here. There are people that are free, and there are people that are freed, who are former slaves, and then there are slaves. And so there's basically three major tiers within Roman society, and the Roman economy is absolutely dependent upon this. The massive quantity of slaves that do the manual labor and some of the skilled labor, the freedmen who accomplish a lot of the clerical and administrative and skilled labor, and then the actual free people throughout the provinces. All of that tier is now Roman citizens. Up until this point, the Romans had been extremely stingy with Roman citizenship. And so, in the provinces, even in a major city, like Athens or Jerusalem, a Roman citizen would be relatively rare, and he would stand out, and he would have privilege and responsibility toward the people around him as being a leg up on everyone else, and he would have special rights that are guaranteed only to Roman citizens. Now, those rights and privileges are guaranteed to all of the free people of the Roman Empire, and there's much discussion about the impacts of this. He reduces the privileged position of Italy further, and so this is part of the same thing. What Caracalla is doing is making the entire Roman Empire Roman. And eliminating the special status that goes to these few people that Caracalla doesn't have that much respect for. Why does he do this? The part is that the old-fashioned, limited, pursuit of distribution of citizenship is hundreds of years antiquated and very much out of keeping with the fact that the people in the provinces are the ones that are generating the revenue and running the economy and ensuring the strength of Rome through business and through the legions. All of that is being done by people that were up to this point non-Romans, and this is very much out of keeping. Caracalla is recognizing the situation as it stands. More practically, though, as citizens, they'll be liable for Roman taxes. And so this is Caracalla's means of restoring the empty contents of the treasury. There's a temporary benefit to this, but imposing all these new taxes has an economic cost as well. He emphasizes the divides, conversely, so this is unifying the whole Roman Empire in a way, but the result of this is that there's more of a sense of other kinds of divides between the people that the Romans are fighting against and conquering the people that are part of the Roman world. There's a big contrast during this period between the urban and the rural, and a big contrast in terms of cultural differences between the Greco-Roman, the Roman absorption of the Hellenistic world, and those who are not a part of that. Uniform tax liability, so all these people are paying the Roman taxes, and as a means of recruiting for the army. So this has a big impact, and it's an economic shock as well as a major transformation in the empire itself. After Caracalla, the Severans are made up of miscellaneous and also-rans. The most famous of these is Elagabalus, who is possibly the natural son of Caracalla, but that might be a rumor. But he wasn't interested in being emperor, and supposedly left all the management of the empire, the actual work of being an emperor, to his grandmother Maisa. This is a young man who has other priorities, and there's some indications that he sort of scorned the position of emperor, and in much the same way as Caligula sneered at the Senate by making his horse a member of that body. He installed a dancer as a praetorian prefect to as a signification of his embracing of hedonism, or as a screw you to the whole idea of hierarchy and structure and political power. Who knows? Our sources for Elagabalus and for Severus Alexander are very questionable and hostile to the Severans, and so Severus Alexander, again, stands back from actually being emperor and puts his mom in charge, or vice versa. His mom was always in charge and he's just a puppet. He seeks the prestige of the Senate, not power for himself. Can't control the armies. The diminution of the Principate is part of the reputation for this period. And again, some of this comes from later sources that are corrupt and hostile and unreliable. But so, for example, we have the story of Elagabalus, who's famously hedonistic and supposedly, conducted all of these orgies. During one of these, he showers the participants in the orgy with rose petals, and so many rose petals are thrown on the orgiast that the weight of them and the layering of them suffocates them, and they're killed. And this is hilarious entertainment for Elagabalus and his friends. There's no evidence to believe that anything like this ever happened. Not just for under Elagabalus, but the whole idea of Roman orgies. A lot of historians believe that this is mostly a fiction, that the idea that there were big public Roman orgies going back to the time of Caligula, famously, dramatized in the pornographic film Caligula, all of the juicy details of these regaled in all kinds of stories and histories. There's every reason to believe that most of these are completely made up and designed to be a means of character assassination. What's more significant here is that this kind of story is told and is believable about Elagabalus. That Elagabalus and the later emperors leading into the third century crisis have lost sense of proportion, lost sense of what it means to be a ruler, and as a result are representative of the disconnect between Rome and the rest of the Roman Empire. Just to put all this in perspective, we've only been talking about a few sets of successions. So there is the Julio-Claudian dynasty, which is all experimentation and hands-on ad hoc reactions to how do I Augustus. Your four emperors, and then the Flavians and the Nerva Antonines, and then the Severans. And so these periods are distinct, but we're only talking about 235 years until, so 250, 260 from the beginning of Augustus's reign, in which, the Roman Empire soars to these great heights and then starts to falter under the Severans. One of the things that this is telling us is that it's not wholly the Severans' fault. In other words, the problems of the Principate are inherent to it. And the vulnerabilities of the Roman Empire being ruled by, this individual who is, in some ways not a king and is in some ways a person who is trying to be a role that was created arbitrarily as a result of civil wars hundreds of years before. The Principate itself has inherent problems that that build and accumulate under the surface, even under the Nerva Antonines, and become manifest under the Severans and lead directly into the massive crisis of the third century, which we'll talk about in the next video. For now, that's that.